Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We're back here with episode number 18 of the vlog. This episode is right after the completion of 2024's Chattajack. I myself had a successful campaign steering the men's OC6. We were able to take first in our division and we were the fastest boat of the day down the river. And for completing the event 5 times consecutively, I get this cool little Tennessee style belt buckle. Like we talked about in the last episode of the vlog, the Chattajack is a major East American race. It pulls in paddlers from Canada, all the way in the Northeast, New York, Philadelphia. And we had a large contingent of paddlers from Texas as well as from Florida. Tennessee is fairly centrally located, so it's kind of a middle section for a lot of people traveling between 8 and 15 hours to this location. In regards to my club here in Hernando, all of the paddlers that we brought up all successfully completed the course. I'm going to spend the majority of the time here talking about the event from my perspective, steering the men's OC6. And it was pointed out to me that it is important to make the distinguishment that the paddlers that I was with in the boat are not affiliated or not under the tutelage of the online paddle school in any way. All of the paddlers that were within my boat are super high level, accomplished marathon canoe paddlers. And I have the pleasure of being friends with them, and the group was organized and I was able to be part of that. But don't think that this is a reflection of the team that I have here in Hernando or that I trained any of these guys. So it's kind of like the dream team being assembled for a common goal of going super fast down the Tennessee River. So in years past, the OC6 would start with all of the small boats that have rudders, like OC1, surf skis, tandem surf skis, OC2s, and we would start in the thick of this group. In 2019, when I did the event, there were only 4 OC6s, so it was a lot easier to kind of manage these larger boats with hundreds of other sit-down crafts. As the event has evolved, the popularity of the OC6 has grown dramatically. So this year there were 29 OC6s between mixed men's and women's, which is a tremendous jump from the 4 from just 5 years ago. OC6 admittedly is probably the most fun way to go down the river, especially if you have a good group of people that you're with. The boat is very fast inherently comparatively to a single person vessel. There's also plenty of space to haul stuff. We had spare paddles. The hydration setup doesn't be so meticulous because you have so much space in there. I had to change your clothes on the inside. There's a lot of things that you can put in there that even in a single person OC1, you're very limited for space. With 29, this year was the first year that these boats are going in their own separate wave. So the first wave is stand-up paddle boarders, prone paddle boarders, traditional canoes, and what they distinguish here as a kayak, which is a 20-inch wide surf ski. And then they have the tandem surf skis in various divisions in this first wave. So on paper, the slowest vessels are likely the 12-foot prone boards, and then the fastest vessels would be the 2-person kayak, so like a V8 double. The original plan was to space out the first wave by about 10 minutes. It didn't feel like we gave them a full 10 minutes, so many of the paddlers did not elapse a full mile before the shotgun shot for our start. In all OC6 racing, the most stressful part of it, no matter what the circumstances is with small boats or a bunch of larger boats, is having a clean start. OC6s are incredibly squirrely through the water. It's very easy to let the boat get away from you and careen off course. It always wants to turn in one direction, and if you wait half of a second too long, the boat's gaining momentum as it's making these shifting turns, drifting through the water. So it's always scary off of a start line because you don't know the skill level of all of the steersmen that are around you. You don't know if they're going to get excited trying to take too many forward strokes and lose track of which direction their boat is drifting to, and then it starts to collide with your own. Having the nose of another boat hit the tail of your vessel, now you have to go through different maneuvers to try and keep a straight line, and it may impede your ability to even paddle, and you just get stuck in these scenarios. So it is something that I think about a lot when assessing different races with the OC6 on where we're going to line up, who we're going to try to line up around, what are the obstructions that are in the body of water, what are the potential turns that we have to deal with and when, and using all of these ideas to try and strategize a clean start. And again, with this Chattajack in particular, I was very fortunate that the team that I have is incredibly talented and incredibly fast. So our ability to rocket right off of the start line was apparent, and it allowed us to jump about a full boat length away from the boat to our right, which opened up a lot more leeway in making sure that we're progressing down the course. A lot of times when you have boats on both sides of you and they are looking at different points to go through, if you're stuck in between them, it's very easy to get jammed. So in this scenario, clearing at least one immediately gave me a little bit of breathing room to the side. So marathon canoes are shorter and wider, rudderless boats designed for like really shallow water in the northeast parts of the US here. If you were to take a traditional camping canoe, like a Coleman that you would buy at Walmart, and make that into a racing vessel, this would be a marathon canoe. Because of the length and the way that it's shaped, the urgency to paddle faster is present in these boats comparatively to an outrigger canoe. You would paddle fast to try and create enough energy to lift the vessel out of the water. So it's hovering around like an airboat almost. It makes it more maneuverable, and it makes it kind of skirt through the water much more efficiently with this higher turnover. With an outrigger canoe being much skinnier and much longer, it is very hard to get an outrigger canoe on lift just from human power alone because of the length and because of the ama that you're dragging through the water as well. So the objective with an OC1 is to create glide with the boat, right? Taking a very long, powerful stroke and having the blade in the air for a moment. The boat is working with you, maintaining its inertia and its momentum. A marathon canoe, the moment the blade comes out of the water, your vessel is immediately slowing down. The amount of glide that you get in these types of vessels is only a fraction of a second. So it is better to just turn over and get back into the water because it is constantly slowing down, since the vessel isn't working with you in the same way an outrigger is with glide. So many of these paddlers are ultra accomplished in this racing style, and so we didn't want to try and change what they're good at, right? We just want to put them in the boat and make sure that they're going to showcase the skills that they already have developed. And the OC6 is a fun amalgamation where you can paddle it in a numerous amount of ways, and as long as the team is working together, the boat is going to go fast. So off of the start line, we are literally going 90 strokes per minute, and the boat just jumps and glides, and it's moving faster, and it's working. From a steersman's perspective, for me, I don't have a lot of time with a super fast crew that can even turn over at 90 strokes per minute. So some of the steering corrections that I make are kind of frantic, and sometimes I second guess where I poke on one side and then immediately poke on the other side because things are happening so fast. In this OC6, being squirrely is now even more touchy because of the amount of input that we're having at 90 strokes per minute. So I was anticipating the difficulty in that, and fortunately we were able to keep the boat relatively straight off of the start line. As the stroke rate started to drop down a little bit, it became much easier to manage and time the steering corrections with the crew. Our stroke rate for the entire 3 hours and 53 minutes was 71.5 strokes per minute. So in the world of outrigger canoe, that sounds like an insane number. But in the world of marathon canoe, when we got done, everybody's like, well, we could have went 75 if we really wanted to. After the start, we make a jump to the front, and we are relatively clear of all of the surrounding boats. Now the next hurdle to clear is we are quickly approaching all of the first wave paddle. It was about 1 mile in when we began passing the majority of these paddlers. And so with the river, most paddlers are staying in the middle of the river to maximize the deep water and the amount of flow that they can get. So as we're approaching, the only good lane to try and get around was near shore on the left side of the turn. The water gets shallow here, but we are clearing the majority of the racers that are staying in the middle of the river. So ultimately, we're taking an unideal line just for simplicity's sake, trying to run up the middle of these slow-moving crafts that yaw with their paddle strokes, do not have rudders, and are very hard to anticipate which direction they're going to go at a given time. Makes it very difficult or impossible to navigate a large boat through these small openings. So it was much safer to go to the side and around the bend past a good 100 paddlers. As we begin progressing forward, the paddlers are starting to get faster and faster as we push further to the front. their ability to keep a vessel straight, their mobility and speed going forward is higher, and it's much easier to see an opening and punch right through it because you can trust that that opening is going to stay there, versus paddlers that are a little bit less skilled are again going to yaw more, and these openings can close immediately. So it's about another mile or two before we can actually make the adjustment to push back into the middle part of the river. At this point, we are surrounded by kayaks and the first bunch of tandem kayaks. These vessels have rudders, so they are super predictable in what they're going to do, and they can hold a perfectly straight line, so it's much easier to see what they're doing, assessing their lane, and making moves around them. So this next point is definitely one of the first world problems of being fast in the scenario, but it did affect the crew in a sense, and I almost hesitate to share it because it sounds so conceited, but because of how closely we started with wave 1, we passed the leading 2 men's tandem kayaks in V8 doubles, and at mile 9 we're next to them and we passed them. At that point, we have just taken the lead on the river, and there are no more boats that we are going to pass, and we turn around and look back, and the next OC6 men's boat on our tail is far enough that they are out of sight completely. And so we immediately enter into this no man's land where we don't have targets anymore to chase. The river's flow is not high enough to chase any records. And so the transition of the mentality within the boat is already, we've won. And we just have to go through the motions to get to the finish line. It's nice to formulate a team that is so talented that they can just win in the first hour. But at the same time, there's a lot to be said about some of the joy and excitement from this event is being near other boats and battling it out to the bitter end. I am on the receiving end of losing a top podium position from last year in OC2 men's by 1 second over a 32-mile race. From the start of the race all the way to the finish line, we were battling it out with another crew. That's the excitement. Even falling short of winning, being part of that environment was winning. And so in the OC6 men's this year, we didn't quite have that same feeling of accomplishment, and it was more surrounded about the camaraderie of us coming together and putting on such a good showcase of skill. That was the thing to bond over. And don't let that come off the wrong way, but everybody that's in this boat is a competitor, and they want to be pushed, they want to be challenged, and it's not about winning, it's about pushing yourself to those next levels. And when you remove some of the mental stimulus that allows you to push to that point, it can become a little dull. And I'm sure we're the only ones that have that problem, and it is a good problem to have. So everything that I just described, we will have accompanying video with voiceover here at the end going over all of that. I just wanted to give a little bit more in-depth on all of that since the video footage is not going to be that long in general. My GoPro was on the fritz at the start line, so I would turn it on, and after 15 seconds, the whole GoPro would just shut off. The battery is full, SD card is also not full, but for whatever reason, it just didn't want to kick on. And so as we're approaching before the shotgun goes, I turn it on and I just pray that we get to see this guy pull the trigger on the shotgun before it dies. And from that point, it ran 12 minutes and then it died. So I don't have a ton of footage to catch up to a majority of the SUPs, but we don't have anything much beyond that point. My wife did OC1. She had a GoPro running for about an hour, so we'll be able to splice in that start and her navigating the field as well. Overall, the race course this year was incredibly slow. The wind direction from the northeast funneled around the turns of the river, and it equated to more upwind sections than tailwind sections. These tougher conditions, combined with it being a bit warm, made a lot of paddlers kind of struggle down the race course. And I know at K2N, a lot of people felt that the course was a bit tougher than it had been in years past. So although I had a easier ride being in a giant super boat, most of the paddlers that were struggling a little bit more in individual or tandem boats, part of our organization, learned a lot about the course and future training going into the 2025 year. Ultimately, a great experience. If you are on this side of the USA, please put this on one of your bucket list races. A big shout out to Zavril Racing Equipment. Most of the guys that are in our boat are sponsored by them in some capacity with free paddles. They gave us a care package, so we had podium shirts, racing shirts, and hats to accompany both of those fits, as well as a very nice windbreaker. So the little bit of apparel made me feel like I was somebody within the paddling community that was superstar enough to get some free merch. They make some of the lightest paddles in the world. They're designed for marathon canoe paddlers that are switching very fast and paddling very quickly, but they do make outrigger canoe paddles, and they're super popular within the dragon boat paddling sphere. Thank you all so much for the support. If you have any questions or the things that you would want to see, please feel free to reach out anytime. I'll try to use some of the footage from this to elaborate on the OC6 steering 101 that we do have on the K2N Online Paddleschool.com. Thank you all again. We'll see you next week for episode number 19 of the K2N vlog. All right, everybody, welcome to Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is at Ross Landing. Boom, turning the lights on there. And so this is when I realized my GoPro was on the fritz, is each time I would turn on the GoPro to get this little bit of footage here, it'd only stay on for about 15 seconds to 1 minute, and then it would power all the way off. But we do have enough footage for this. So you can see lots of people, man. We got 700 boats, pretty ingenious way of lining up the OC6s. You have to walk them down this dock into the water. And the unlimited boats are pretty simple enough. You can like lift them over your head and walk down. There's one boat here. It's hard to see because of the sunrise as they're walking down, and the AMA is kind of hovering over the guardrail though. But we had them facing front and back so we could launch off of either side of the dock just to expedite 29 boats getting into the water quickly. So we're coming around here. So wave 1 is still queuing up, and we're going out at the same time as wave 1. We start behind them on the water, we watch wave 1 go, and then we start to queue up for wave number 2. So here's another shot of all the boats as we're all queuing up. Everybody did an excellent job lining up here, giving each other space and picking spots. We got real lucky with where we're at, and the support boat splitting us, which is great because there's more space between us and the blue boat on the side. The shotgun misfires here twice. The guy in the blue here hands it to the guy in the black. He picks it up, he tries to hit it, and then he removes a shell, and then he finally shoots it. So we're sitting there watching him try to pull the trigger 4 or 5 times, which is pretty funny. The AMA super close to the sport boat just to give the white boat to my right a little extra space. And then as we're going through here, there's plenty of space between us and this blue boat to our side. I start to drift over in front of them as the AMA clears them, because we do have to go to the left side of the river here. Really amazing with the crew that I was really fortunate enough to steer for. They were just amazing off the start line. And it's funny, we get this clean start and they're just talking, like nobody's tired yet. And my adrenaline's going, man. So I feel like I'm starting to get a little tired. This is a buddy, Benjamin Beck, who we did a podcast with. This is his crew in Texas, made the trip over. They're borrowing a boat from Honolulu down in Miami. Yep, we pull ahead. I hear everybody cheering. So there's wave 2 is still on land there. So there's 300 or 400 people on land going by, and it's hard not to get hyped up. Whole point of coming out here is to have some fun. Yep, so we make a pretty clean start. They drift over to come right in behind us, and then we'll see how long they're back there for. I stopped turning my head after the bridge up here. But it's always good just to monitor where everybody's at. It's not so much being paranoid about getting past or anything, it's just spatial awareness, right? You want to make sure, if they are in this position, it means that you may not be able to make specific moves, if space is unavailable. So pulling ahead, I have the camera edited to kind of turn back and go forward so you don't have to watch us paddling at 80 strokes per minute exclusively. Sunrise is so cool. It really is an excellent venue starting under the bridge. It is a rolling start as well, which I think is nice, especially with the larger boats. It just gets them going. That first few strokes when the boat is 0 miles per hour, it's very squirrely. Like that's when people really spin out immediately. And so just having it drift and tracking before you hammer it definitely helps. So there was like a little bit of current on the first half of this course. It's like half a mile an hour or something. So we're pretty steady at 9 mile an hour average for the first hour and a half or so. On the second part of the river, it started to slow down to the low 8s, which kind of changed our average to 8.25 over the course of the event. In 2021, me and my wife did tandem surf ski together, and off of the start line here, we were going north of 12 miles an hour, and we were nowhere near the front. So there's been years past where there's much more current. So So here's the field of sup paddlers that we begin to pass. This is about a mile in, and we're starting to pass a good chunk of paddlers. So the river here makes an upcoming left side turn here, and the majority of those paddlers are out on the right side. Normally we would want to be out there. It's a little bit deeper water. There is current at this point in the race, but it is way too dangerous to go over there and try to navigate these paddlers specifically. Again, they're going to drift around quite a bit. Slow sup paddlers yaw incredibly quickly, and if you have two of them that drift towards each other, that opening that you were aiming for is now closed, and you have to make the decision of which person you're going to hit, right? Which is not a scenario that you want to be in unless you absolutely are out of options. In this scenario, we have options, right? We're coming over to the side, we're in the shallower water, a little bit less current, but we're able to just paddle and get through here. So there are some paddlers that are here far on the left side, and but those are easy to dodge, right? They're not clumped up side by side and 10 thick. It's just one or two here or there. So we come up by the paddler here. We're all feeling chipper and we're cheering her on. Good luck on your race. And then you can see the men's Texas boat is a little further back as we're approaching, past the mile mark. It was interesting with our start, like everybody hammered it, but I don't think it was a true sprint in the purest form. I think the boat could have gone faster, and some of the other boats saw us, and I think they were pushing into a red line position to try and keep up, which was very reassuring, as like the crew's like chit-chatting and chuckling, and so it's just a sign that their exertion level is not, incredibly high, which means we have a few more gears necessary as needed. So a lot of paddlers here on the right side, but you can see this lane totally clear, but on the left, right, you can see like it's, there's no water not too much further away. So like I said, you can feel the water is pretty shallow. Our crew has a speed coach, so we have a heads-up display in the front, and the guys kind of feel that, and so we start paddling a little faster just to get the heck out of this sucky water. So you can see right here, the boat starts to accelerate more. The term for this is popping the boat. So when you start paddling faster in shallow water, you create a little bit more lift and try to again, hover the craft out of those situations. Long paddle strokes in really shallow water is kind of a pain, right? You don't get the glide from all the effort of the longer stroke. So just kind of tapping your way out of there is a tool to use. And you can see we've maintained over 9 miles an hour here, even though the water is not favorable. Passing Trish here, she's Central Florida sup racer. She's also done the Wild Hog. I wish we'd started the vlog series during the Wild Hog next year for sure. So skipping ahead just a little bit, now we have more paddlers that are drifting to the side here, and so just a little bit more tactics and getting around them. These guys were real cool. They started hooting and hollering as we went by. So the reason that I'm trying to go close to these guys is I don't want to give them too much space, because the water depth is such an issue further to the left, right? So as these paddlers that we're passing, you can tell that they're tracking more straight, they're a little bit more predictable, and they're going faster. So it's a little easier to kind of drift over next to them without worrying about them going from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock in this scenario, and taking up the lane that we're anticipating. So it's not my intention to whiz paddlers and get super close to them, right? But again, we're trying to balance having a favorable line, dealing with the current, dealing with the water depth, and getting around paddlers safely. This was a lot of fun. So steering the boat at a higher rate, it's a little tricky. You can see I do these little, one-stroke pokes here and there, and my timing on them is not incredibly good. So this is a good example of, we have an alley here, right? And we're gonna try to go for it. You can see the paddler on the left is paddling on their right side, so I'm anticipating that her yaw is gonna start moving her to the left here. So that's gonna keep this lane open here. If she was paddling on the left side, I would have jumped to her left, and anticipating that her nose would go towards this 4-person sup on the side. Yeah, if you're not familiar with a 4-person sup, I believe that's a big inflatable, and yeah, that's what it looks like. Maybe next year I'll get the crew to do a 4-man sup with me instead of the OC6. Patrick in our seat 3 was enjoying the comfort of the boat so much that he was literally jumping around at points, and it looked like sup paddling, so he may have a future in that and not realize it yet. So here's another draft train on the side, and again, a draft train is an indication of commanding a board well, going fast, and working together with other people. So again, these paddlers, they don't yaw very much, so you can get super close to them, and you can kind of, you see that they're traveling forward is a much tighter direction than lower skill level paddlers. There's the prone paddlers. Every time we pass prone paddlers, I was thinking, you know, I don't really miss doing that comparatively to flying around here at 8 to 10 miles an hour off the start line. Yeah, so it's really cool. I mean, we're passing a ton of paddlers, and you know, that's half of the fun of the event is, you know, getting through these paddlers. If we caught these paddlers at mile 2 or 3, we would definitely be in the middle of the river. And then at that point, it's worth the gamble of weaving through these paddlers because they're gonna stretch out even more, right? In the first mile, they're still very bunched up. So I mean, the amount of space you have between groups of paddlers can be incredibly limited. And that's part of the fun, of the event, is just kind of planning. You know, if you watch our vlog or follow the K2N Dragon Boat Club here in Hernando, I spend, you know, hours every week taking boats, getting close to other paddlers, navigating turns. Sometimes we lightly touch or bump, and, you know, there's a level of comfort that comes from spending time with a club, spending time with a group, being in close quarters, right? There's a lot of times we got close to people here and they were visibly flustered because they may only paddle by themselves and they don't see boats unless they go to events, and they may not be fast enough to be next to other paddle craft. So we make, you know, a real point to make sure that our paddlers are very comfortable in space, because it's a tool that you can use to your advantage in racing as well as staying safe. So believe it or not, the GoPro is actually going to shut off as we reach a group of two paddlers, and we're about to shoot through them. I assure you that we made it through them. If you're watching the video here in a minute, it may look like that we kill one of them, but we definitely zip by them without too much issue. So it's these two paddlers here with the Marathon canoe on the left, and then we have a SUP on the right. And then my GoPro starts beeping here in about a second, but I promise we make this, we make it through. So that's the cliffhanger. You have to tune in next week to see how that concludes. So, you know, that's the end of my footage. So I didn't turn around and fuss with the GoPro after. And this is my wife on her start. And I need to point out to her that she's got to be up there at the front of the race, man. She's back. They started the race and she's like 300 meters back somewhere. You got to get up there, being aggressive off the start line. So, you know, my wife is a lot nicer than me, so she's, you know, taking her start conservatively. You don't win in the first 100 meters, you win over 32 miles. Definitely a tough course this year. You can see as well the choppy water displaced from, you know, all the paddlers. So if you think it's a flat water event, you should plan for, you know, going out into a windy bay or something, because that's what the start line ends up being. Without the OC6s here on the start line, it's a little less choppy, but it's still a lot of paddlers frantically hitting it. There's an OC3 on her right, so there are some, you know, multi-team boats that may be similar in size to the OC6. OC3 would be such a fun way to go down. If it didn't have a rudder, as a steers person, it'd definitely be a fun ride with the right crew. But yeah, so this is her start, and you can see, I mean, the wealth of paddlers all around. She has the standard GoPro, not the 360, so I can't spin the camera around to get view of other racers. We have a paddler in Hernando who I did OC2 mix with, or OC2 men's with in 22, and he has the same color OC1, that green and orange one there. So when I saw the video, I'm like, holy crap, Hank's out there, but it's somebody else. The color schemes on those ozone boats are always really cool. Yep, going through, if you watch the vlog of Key West, you've seen Christina paddle in some fairly turbulent water. So choppy water in this scenario, it's not really, you know, enough to throw off most of our paddlers from K2N here. But again, it comes from practice. You know, Christina's great at drafting and getting super close, and, you know, not letting that fluster you or get your heart rate up. Helps a lot on a start, especially like this when you're surrounded by 300 people. You never know what's gonna happen. And then being aware and being cool-headed allows you the opportunity to make decisions and navigate out of dangerous situations. So it helps with your safety overall. People that get flustered and freaked out are most likely to fall into the water, and things can spiral really quickly if you are just not used to, you know, some of these higher stakes situations. I should have put the GPS on here because she's still moving pretty quick. You know, the OC6, it's a hard comparison just because, you know, there's 6 of us flying down the river. And then this is further down the course. She had just turned on the GoPro and she's like in a little draft train there. Dana's up there in the orange boat. She's another Florida paddler. But this is about it for the footage that we have. Thank you all so much for checking this all out. The footage came out really good, and I know OC6 and OC1 is popular within the K2N online sphere, and seeing a fast OC6 definitely captures the imagination, which is really cool. It's great to put that content out there for you guys to see. So tune in next week for episode number 19. Thank you again.